Welcome to Growth and Green Tea, the podcast that explores the stories of individuals who have overcome obstacles and trials in their lives. I am your host, Andrea Beem, and each week I'll be joined by a special guest who will share their personal journey of growth and resilience. From facing difficult challenges to experiencing personal growth, these guests will share their unique stories and insights. And through their experiences, my aim is to empower and encourage our listeners, providing them with a blueprint for dealing with their own obstacles. So grab a cup of green tea and join us as we dive into the inspiring stories of individuals who have turned their struggles into opportunities. Welcome to Growth and Green Tea. All right, guys, we are here today on the Growth and Green Tea podcast, and I have a super special guest with me today. I'm really excited for you guys to get to hear her story and to get to know her. I got the pleasure of meeting Stephanie, our guest, at a dinner. I went to a dinner where she was a speaker, and Stephanie and I have literally been connected ever since. We did a Bible study together, and we text each other, and I'm so amazed and wowed at the grace of God and the glory of God in Stephanie's story. And so I'm really excited for you guys to hear this today. So Stephanie Koontz is our guest speaker for today on our podcast. And we're going to go deep. We're going to go deep today. We're going to understand some of the mountains that she has battled, and, also share some tools and tips with you guys on how maybe you can apply some of the lessons that she learned throughout her life so far into your life and your struggles. So what we're going to start with is really just asking Stephanie, what was the beginning part of your journey? Talk to me about your childhood. What was your childhood like? I mean, did you have a tough childhood? Did you grow up in a great home? Where did it all kind of begin for you?
I grew up in a great home. My mom and dad, they loved me. They were workers. We grew up in White City outside of Medford, and I've got an older sister, 2 years older, and a brother that's 2 years younger. We played baseball on the street. It was typical. It was a great childhood. It really was. And my fifth grade year, we moved to a small town called Powers, and its population 640 people. My dad's side of the family is from there, and so we moved there. And my older sister kind of took the path of the pretty one, and I kind of took the path of the tomboy. My dad worked cows out at the ranch all the time, and so I wanted to be with my dad, and I didn't want to do the girly stuff. And so I was constantly comparing myself to my sister, who she was beautiful, and she was in the Miss America pageants and the Teen Oregon, and she had a boyfriend. She had all the friends. She was great at sports, and I was the tomboy that wore a Chicago Bulls baseball cap backwards with the Union beige striped shirts. Remember those t-shirts that everyone had?
Yeah.
And I had the bowl cut too on top of it. And probably the very first time that I got my heart tugged at, telling me I didn't fit in and that I was not one of those, ever going to be one of those pretty girls, was something as simple as I was out at recess, and I showed up in my cool LA Gear sneakers, and I was super excited to have these shoes, right? And one of the boys came up, and he's just like, "Your family's so poor. You have those?" Because he had the Reebok shoes with the shack, the little bubble that you pop in there. And I just had the LA Gear sneakers. And then I kind of opened my eyes to my family isn't one of the most financially secure families, and maybe I really won't fit into this crowd. And so that was about junior high. And at 14 is when I really got into how I looked and my appearance. Are we ready to go to this level?
Yeah, we're ready to dig in. I mean,
so
this part of your story, Stephanie, is really profound. And I think people need to know the depths of, I don't know if mental anguish is the right word or not, but I know when I listened to your story originally, that was definitely a word that popped into my head, was just those things that you heard growing up. We all have seeds, right? Like there are seeds, good and bad, that get planted in our head. And some of them are intentional, some of them are unintentional. And I think people don't always realize what kind of impact they're having when they say certain things, you know, and it could be different triggers, right? Like for you, it was the shoes, like that was the, you know, like that beginning memory of where this kind of all started. And you said a really important word in there, which is comparison, right? You started that comparison part of the journey at a young age. And I think that's honestly in our society getting younger and younger. That comparison trap and that being, you know, put on kids that they just start comparing so young. But I want you to jump into this part of your story, because I think, you know, we're just going to jump in the meat and potatoes right off the bat. And I think we should.
So mine, like you said, it's getting younger and younger. So then I was 14 years old, and I was starting, you know, through puberty, I was gaining weight, and I saw my older sister getting skinnier because she was working out all the time and mindful of that stuff. And I just wanted to fit in. It felt like all the boys were friends with me because they wanted to get closer to my sister. And I was in that friend category, never in the dating category. And at age 14, this boy moved to town, and he showed some interest in me. And I jumped all the way in, and I started talking to him, hanging out a little bit. And then right off the bat, I lost my virginity to him because I was so desperate to try and fit in with the cool kids. With, if I could just get this, if I have sex with this guy, then he'll love me, and then I can fit into the cool kid category. And so I lost my virginity age 14. And then a couple days later, I was out jogging one of the back roads, and I heard a truck pull up behind me, and it was his truck, and his voice yelled out the window, "You better run faster than that, or you're always going to be fat." And my heart just shattered into a million pieces. And it was just brought verification to all of those seeds that were planted in there that I was never going to be good enough. And so I thought that I finally had found something that was going to make me good enough. And it turned out to be exactly what I thought, that I was never going to be good enough and I had to be a certain way. And so I made it up in my mind that I was never going to weigh more than 104 pounds. I was going to do whatever it took to get to 104 pounds. And so I became bulimic, and I made a choice right then and there that anything I ate, I was going to throw it right back up. And very quickly, I lost a lot of weight, and people were concerned. They were worried. They would ask questions, but they didn't really know how to handle it because I would never let them into the truth of what was really going on. When my parents found out about it, they tried what they could. They tried counseling. They tried to lock me in my room after meals. But at that point, it became my addiction. It was my obsession. It was all I could think about, all I could. It quickly became just a demonic pull, almost, if you will. It quickly became all I cared about. And it wasn't even about losing weight anymore. It was the high that I got from planning food, eating food, and then throwing up the food. And then the added bonus was the attention that I got from all of the wrong people. It was all the guys that only wanted one thing, but of course it brought that extra attention. And so then I felt like, this is it. I found it. I found a way to fit in. And in my head, I thought that was the normal way that people stayed skinny. I thought that that's how everyone lost weight. And so I didn't see it as a problem, except for I loved it. I loved everything that went with it. And when my parents would lock me in my room, that anxiety, like I have to get this food out, I got so quickly into my addiction so fast. I cut a hole in my bedroom window, and I would stash garbage bags in my bedroom, and I would throw up in the garbage bags and hide it behind the dresser, behind the wall in the little lean-to area. And then I would put the wall back so nobody knew it was there, but there was bags of vomit stashed outside of my bedroom. I mean, that's how deep it got. And I would wait till my parents were gone, and then I'd take the bags out and go dispose of them. And I did that every single day for the next 15 years straight.
Wow. 15 years. One of the words that you just said really caught my attention, because I think this happens to a lot of people, whatever it is that shows up in our lives. You said it was crazy how quickly it happened. I mean, for you, I mean, it was really fast, right? Like you found the solution and then you literally grabbed onto the solution with all arms, legs, I mean, everything, and you were all in.
It took away the pain. It took away the anxiety. It took away the thoughts. It took my focus off of what I wasn't. And I was able to shift that focus onto who I wanted to be. And it was the only thing that I could get to make the anxiety go away.
So 15 years that you were battling that. So you went through, obviously a mental piece of this that was so painful that when you found what you thought was the solution, you grabbed onto that, but then that solution catapulted you into an even deeper and darker place. So go into that part of your story about where did the bulimia lead you to?
So I was able to, I maintained my 104 pounds all through high school. But with that bulimia, it got to where I would just binge eat all night long. And with bulimia, it's not like you can call up your friends and be like, hey, let's order a pizza and binge eat together. So it was a very lonely addiction. So that loneliness and what I thought was fixing everything just made that loneliness even deeper. And so that's when I turned to drinking to be able to socialize. And so by 17, 18 years old, I was drinking almost every single day just to fit in, just to be able to have that the social aspect and not feel so insecure about myself. I had that liquid courage to go out and go to parties and try to be as normal as possible. And that quickly turned into, I was drinking easily. By age 21, I was physically dependent on alcohol. I had to drink to be able to get out of bed and to function. And so I graduated high school. I went to U of O on scholarships, and I drank and partied my scholarships away. I thought that I could move schools, change locations, and get back on track. So I transferred down to SOU down in Ashland. Same scenario. I just kept drinking more and more. And then Southern Oregon is big on rugby players. And this part of my story cut my heart so deep that it's hard to even talk about it because of the painful memories around this part of it. But the rugby players, they all have games afterwards. They get beer drinking games and whatnot. And so here I was, this skinny girl, and I could chug beer. And so they put me at the front of the beer drinking games. And one of the team captains, of course, he caught my eye through a party, and then we went and he got one of his buddies down there, and we did stuff, we messed around, we had sex, both of them together. And when they were walking away, one of them felt, that wasn't right, we shouldn't have done that kind of thing, because they kind of just left me there. And the team captain said, you can't rape the willing. And that just made me realize who I had become, the level of low that I was. And Satan reminded me, he let me know that's where you deserve to be, is at the bottom right there. You're right, you cannot rape the willing. And that just burnt into my brain. And it got me more into a depression, a dark depression, that I needed to drink more to be able to numb the pain. And it got to where I decided to add Diurex water pills to the concoction of throwing up, because now I needed to get skinnier. Now I needed to figure out a way to fill this. It was like a empty, hollow shell is the best way that I could explain it. I wanted to feel something, but it was so dead inside that I couldn't feel anything anymore. And these Diurex water pills helped me lose a little bit more weight. But the problem is my potassium level got so low that at age 20, I ended up having my first seizure due to malnutrition. And my body had seized up because my potassium levels were so low. I ended up in ICU for a couple of days. And when I woke up, the doctors had showed me that I had flatlined and that I almost died. And it didn't even faze me. I threw up my next meal and I went home, and I couldn't stop at this point. 21, 22 years old, kept doing the same thing. And then I started dating this guy who came with an 8-month-old son. I kind of cleaned up a little bit because I really wanted, this guy knew me from growing up, and he tried really hard to get me to change my life and change things around. We ended up moving to Roseburg, and I got a job at Applebee's, and I did really good at being the mom on the outside, but all of that pain, all that baggage, all the addiction was still there. I just hid it. I got to be a master manipulator and hid everything. And then in 2007, I got pregnant, and my little girl was born. Her name is Carly John. She was born in 2007, and she was born healthy. And I listened to Satan's lies all the time. You're going to kill this baby. You're going to kill this baby. Because I couldn't stop throwing up when I was pregnant with her. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking cigarettes, but I could not stop throwing up. I threw up my prenatal vitamins. I threw up any type of protein shake that I got. And apples, carrots, it all came back up. And my little girl was born healthy, but about 2 years later, she started getting really sick. And we went to Dornbecker's to get a second opinion. She had ulcerative colitis, and that started a whole new journey for us. I had to quit my job in order to care for her. At this point, I had split up with her dad, so it was just Carly and I, and we spent a lot of time, almost a year at Dornbecker's. She had her large intestine removed. She had a colostomy bag put in. We went through Remicade infusions, methotrexate, all these. We went through Life Flight. She would have prolapses. Her stoma would prolapse out. Her intestines would come out of her body, and we'd have to hop on Life Flight and get up to Dornbecker's. And seeing my little girl sick still wasn't enough for me to stop any of it. I still threw up every single meal. I remember days that she would be NPO at the hospital. She couldn't eat anything, and I would sneak her hospital food and eat it and go in the bathroom and throw up while she was on the hospital bed. I would sneak alcohol into her hospital room because I just couldn't stop. And we got her up to Seattle Children, and she had a J pouch surgery done. She had a reversal, and she was doing great. She was finally going to be able to go to school, and my drinking, my lack of ability to hold a job at this point, I got a DUI with my daughter in the car, and my blood alcohol level at this time with my daughter in the car was 0.42. And so that tells you how much the legal limit is 0.08. That's how much legal limit is. And mine was 0.42. And that's how much I had to have in me to be able to function. Throughout all of this, I started having more and more seizures from my alcohol withdrawals. I would get to where if I didn't have anything to drink after about a couple hours, my body would go into withdrawals, and I would have a seizure, and I'd end up in the hospital. And it got so exhausting having to explain to everybody the truth of where I was, because I'd wake up in a hospital room. For one, I'd be mad that they took the time to save my life. I would always think that was finally the way I was gonna just end all the pain. And I found out that if I couldn't buy alcohol from 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. and I could go to Walmart 24 hours a day and buy rubbing alcohol. So instead of having the hassle of having another seizure due to these withdrawals, I drank rubbing alcohol. And if I couldn't drink rubbing alcohol, I would drink hand sanitizer. I would put it in my coffee cup. I would put it in my soda can, whatever it was. And I would have it with me at all times so that I didn't get that sick again. And so I got my first DUI with my daughter in the car. And about 8 months later, I got my second DUI with my daughter in the car again. And that time I blew a .38. And my sister lived in Eugene. She finally was just like, you got to change your life. If you quit drinking, if you promise to get help, you can come live with us in Eugene and get your life straightened back out. Carly was well enough that she could go to school. So I knew it was really my only chance. So we got up there. I started clinicals. I stayed sober from alcohol. I could do that because I had my deep, dark demon inside, that my drug of choice, so to say. That was my eating disorder, and nobody could take that from me because that was mine to keep, and it was the only way that I could breathe. And we were going to celebrate recovery. I started going to church in Springfield, but I was just there. My brain was so focused on food and image and what everyone else thought about me. It was so consumed with comparison, and I could have a conversation with you and I couldn't tell you what you said because all I cared about was how I was going to get my next fix, where's the bathroom, how much food can I eat, and when can I throw up. That's all I cared about. And so even though I sat in church sermons, I didn't know. I knew that God and Jesus were somewhat related, and that's the extent of what I knew about church. And anyway, so Carly started preschool at Thurston, down in at Thurston Childhood Development Center. She got to go to school. I was doing clinicals, and I came home one day, and something just didn't seem right. My mom had been watching her that day, and she looked kind of sick, and so I knew it was time to take her into the hospital and get things checked out. And on November 22nd, 2011, I took her in the emergency room. They took her temperature, and they immediately rushed her back. And within about a minute, she erupted from the inside out and went into cardiac arrest. And they did CPR for about 45 minutes. And they finally brought her back, and she was breathing on her own. And the doctors up at Dornbecker's had done a Zoom conference, to try and explain to me the severity of what was happening. And I knew that my daughter was going to be fine. Everything was going to be fine. She's going to come home with me. They just need to get her to Dornbecker's. And they explained the complications and what was really going on, but it wasn't sinking in. And when we got up to Dornbecker's, she had coded again for a second time for about 20 more minutes. We got up to Dornbecker's, and face to face with the doctor, he had told me, you need to pick a time. Because at this point she was on life support, and he explained that all the organs were shutting down, and she wasn't going to go home, and I had to pick a time. And the only voice that I could hear was Satan's voice telling me that this is all your fault, and you did this to her. You couldn't stop throwing up when you were pregnant with her, and this is all your fault. And so I held my little girl in my arms, and she took her last breath on November 22nd, 2011. And I went deeper and darker into my addiction. I isolated from everybody. And I remember I quit chewing my food because I wanted to die. Something in the back of my head told me that if I killed myself, I wouldn't get to see her again. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew if I committed suicide, I would never get to see her. And so I quit chewing my food, and I wanted my esophagus to erupt. That way I could end it all. And it got to where I was drinking an entire rubbing alcohol, an entire bottle of rubbing alcohol each and every day, just to be able to get up at 7, make it to the liquor store to buy a fifth, to be able to get into the shower, to be able to function and go to work. I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings at this time, and I would bring my alcohol with me and function enough to serve dinner to people and then do it all over again. And it got so bad that I lost my job. I lost my house. I was living under the bridge in River Road, and I was the drunk that you see talking to the stop signs. And the cops ended up picking me up, and they took me to the mental institution. And then doctors told my mom that it was called postictal psychosis, and it's basically from when your brain is floating on alcohol and it doesn't have enough time to process anything out. They call it Wernicke-Korsakoff. And the doctors told my mom that I was going to be that way forever, that I probably would never come out of that psychotic state. And one day I just woke up, and I don't remember how long I was there. I don't remember much except for one day I woke up. And so I know that God had a different plan, except for I wasn't ready. I remember I threw up my first meal again. And when I got out of the mental institution, I went to the Willamette Family Treatment Center, and I found ways to sneak in a phone. I was online dating again. I was doing anything I could to get away from the guilt and the shame on the inside. All I could hear was Satan's voice telling me, "It's all your fault that you did this." Throughout that mess, I was dating a guy, and we got pregnant, and I just couldn't do it. And so I chose to have an abortion.
This is, there's so many common threads to what I'm hearing you say that, wow, I mean, it's even hard for me to go. This is why I want people to hear your story, because your story is just, it's not only is it powerful, but it's powerful because you had every word that I can give: hopelessness, shame, guilt, comparison. You're talking about, how Satan is putting these words in your head. And I think that's such a big thing, is that we think as humans that when we hear those thoughts in our head, you're not good enough for something, or that's happening because of you, because you did something bad, so now this bad thing is happening. And that narrative, that story that goes on repeat in our brain, that we struggle with, whatever word you want to pick, whatever the struggle is that someone's having, it isn't coming from where they think it's coming from, right? They're telling themselves this, and yet, I had I think actually you and I were in the same Bible study. I think this was the one we did together, where the gal said, when I have those thoughts, I ask myself one question, and that is, would my Jesus say that to me? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, then those thoughts that are swirling around, you've got to understand, I think, the source of where they're coming from. And not just the source, but what's the intent behind it? What's the intent of putting those thoughts in your head? What good does that do you, right? None. It doesn't do you any good. But we're making a choice to listen to someone, Satan, that is a known liar, right? A known deceiver, a known distractor. We know this about him, and yet the mental fortitude it takes to battle against those thoughts that he puts there, right? It's immense, right? The mental fortitude is immense that it requires. And I saw a post the other day that said, how oh gosh, what was the word? Hang on, let me think of the right word. I think it was powerful. How powerful or how priceless must a soul be if both God and Satan are willing to fight for it?
Really good.
So, I mean, for anybody that's out there listening, I need you to hear that. Like, I need you to hear how valuable must you be if both God and Satan are fighting over you.
I think that's the root of a lot of problems. But then, like, people will look at my story and they'll chalk it up to my alcoholism. And alcohol, I could leave that. That was just a way to socialize. That deep rooted stuff, the comparison, the guilt, the shame, all that inside stuff, that's where Satan digs his claws in. And that's when he thinks he's got you, is because that's all the stuff that's going on in your head. That the alcohol was like an outward expression of the mess that was going on. But if I didn't drink, then you wouldn't know what was going on the inside. And that's that deep, deep layer.
So for you, was in thinking back to a turning point for you, was there an actual spot or moment in your mind that you can think of that was a moment where just a flip switched for you, or was it a process over time?
To change and get better, or to go down the dark road?
To change and get better.
So that after my daughter passed away, I had an abortion. I got out of the mental institution. I went to Willamette Family Treatment Center. And then, like I said before, I was kind of in church. I was kind of plugged in with people. New Life Church is where my daughter's funeral was. And the drummer for the church at that time, I thought that would fix it. If I just dated a guy that was in the church, that will fix all of this inside stuff. And I started dating him, and then I got pregnant again. And I still could not stop throwing up. I threw up that entire pregnancy as well. And day after day, Satan told me, you're going to kill this baby too. You're going to kill this baby too. And the day after my son was born, he was born on Christmas 2013. The day after he was born, it wasn't my daughter. It didn't fix the pain. It didn't take away what I was feeling inside. And I instantly went back to drinking again. And within 2 months, I was pregnant again. And I couldn't stop drinking this time. I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't stop throwing up. And I ended up having a miscarriage from drinking too much. And about 6 months in, the state came and they took my son away. And I had nothing. I had nothing except for Satan's lies. And there was a pastor at the church that stepped in, William Fairchild, and I got so tired of disappointing him, because he had tried and tried, and finally I had nothing left anymore. And he suggested that I go to Teen Challenge, and it's a year-long faith-based recovery program. And in my head, I was like, all right, I'm going to go there. I'm going to get sober. No more drinking. They don't need to know about my eating disorder. They don't need to know what's going on. I just need to fake it till I make it for this year of being sober, and then I can get my son back. And when I got to Teen Challenge, I saw that I couldn't hide anymore. So 15 years of throwing up every single day. The only time that I ever skipped a day of not throwing up was when I didn't eat. If I didn't eat, then I didn't have to throw up. And those were the only days that I made it without throwing up. So when I got to Teen Challenge, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. And then it was finally time. And like I said, I didn't know who God was. And there was a cross out in the classroom, and on my knees, I tried to find different ways to keep being able to throw up at the center. And I knew that I just couldn't do it anymore. And I fell to my knees and I begged him, and I said, God, if you're real, take this from me. So I tried on my own to stop for so long. If you're real, take this from me. And he, right then and there, he delivered me from both of them. And so that was June 11th, 2014. And the verse that sticks with my head is Psalms 103:12. God cast my rebellious acts as far as the east is from the west. And I remember just that feeling like 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from my shoulder, and I didn't have to fight anymore. The torment, the torture, that empty, hollow feeling, all of it was instantly gone the minute I surrendered my life to him.
So everything leading up to this, I think it's important too, to hear the danger of you problem solved and you came up with a supposed solution that was this Band-Aid, and the Band-Aid created another problem. And then that problem created another Band-Aid, which created another problem, right? And it's kind of this vicious circle that you find yourself in. And it's just, yeah, it's just that domino effect of just, you fight one thing, and then that brings something else that you got to fight, and you got to find a new solution for that. And while you're still trying to handle the first problem, and it's just constantly trying to find these, what our brain says is a solution. It's what we find at the moment. And, and we think that it's working, right? But it's just creating a whole nother problem. It's not actually solving anything. And
surface level.
Yeah. And I think that's the danger of it, is how gradual that is, right? There's a phrase I heard once that said, our life happens gradually, then suddenly. Like you go into debt gradually, but you wake up one day going, oh my gosh, like I am so far in debt, I don't know what to do. Or, or maybe that's an addiction, right? Like you gradually get into it, something happens, and then you have to increase what you're doing in order to continue getting the same feeling. And all this happens gradually. And then suddenly you're so deep into it, you don't know how to get out, right? Like even if you wanted to find an actual solution, you don't know how to do it or where to do it. And it's such a powerful hold in our lives, anything like that, right? The alcohol, the bulimia, the shame, the guilt. It is, you kind of said it earlier, like that's when Satan grabs hold of you and just doesn't let go, because he knows he's got you at that point, right? He's like, you're mine.
Twist that dagger a little bit deeper.
Right. And if he can just keep causing that, that pain, then they're constantly going to be looking for, the wrong solution. So it sounds to me like it was a little bit of both, right? You had the moment where you're on your knees. You had the moment where you're praying. You had the moment where you feel like everything got lifted off your shoulders in that one moment. But it really is gradual too, because of the things that led you there to begin with. I don't think anyone can look at your story and just the amount of things is overwhelming to me. It is overwhelming to me. Like I think of, just one or two things in my life, and I feel an immense amount of shame. And I look at your story and I'm like, you just had one thing after another that was causing pain or continuing to deepen the wrong thoughts in your brain, just cementing them farther and farther. And so you get to this place where you're on your knees and you know that this has to change. And talk to me about, I guess I want to go two places with this, because hindsight is always 2020. So when you think back about everything prior to you being on your knees, what are some words that you would use to describe how you felt for, I don't know if I have the timeline right, but let's say those 20 some years of your life, 15 years of your life? How would you summarize how you felt during that time? What were some words that you can describe that with?
Torment would be the torture, would be the words to describe it. When I talk about it in my book, but right before I went to the mental institution, there was some visions that I had, and mind you, this is prior to me surrendering my life to Jesus, but it was these snakes were coming up out of the linoleum, and they were hissing at me and spitting at me, and they were calling me a whore, they were calling me a murderer, they were calling me worthless. And the snake started drawing out the names of all of the men that I had ever slept with on the wall. And they were guys that I had completely forgotten about until this vision. And the snakes were spelling out all these names, telling me that I would never be loved, that I was never going to be lovable. And I felt dirty. I felt worthless. And these snakes just got closer and closer. And then this Wolverine like thing starts coming out of the wall, and like I feel the life coming in and out of me. And I think that it was a huge wake-up call. And I know that I heard a voice tell me, if you don't change your ways, you'll never see your daughter's face again. And I saw the back of my daughter's head, and I was screaming and begging for her to turn around. And she walked out of the room, and the door closed behind her. And the voice told me, this will be your hell. You won't get to die. You will stay stuck in this torture, in this torment. I watched my skin burn and the flesh. I can still smell the smell of like this oozing lava coming out of my skin. And that was just such a vivid wake-up call for me, that is what hell would look like. I wouldn't get to die, because that's the easy way out. And Satan will keep you in that torture and that torment as long as he can. And so that's how I felt, was that trapped, almost like his puppet. Like I had to keep sabotaging anything good. I had to keep destroying other people so that I could hurt them before they would hurt me. And I felt like his puppet, to where at least I had somebody, even though it was Satan, even though it was evil that was leading me, at least I felt something in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What was you used some really descriptive words. I mean, the torment and feeling trapped, I think, were the two words that I really picked out of there, because I think a lot of people feel trapped, and they feel trapped in their torment. I mean, I think those two words literally paint the picture that so many people struggle with mentally. And
the thoughts that go through your head nonstop, not being able to communicate, not being able to focus, not being able to have a conversation with people. It was so suffocating that the only way out was to find that release through throwing up.
See, and I think that's it. They don't see the way out, right? There's no flashlight or path or door that seems obvious in the moment, right? When you're in the thick of it, it's hard to ever see what those are. So when you are on your knees, kind of fast forward here a little bit for me into what was it like going through the recovery? I mean, you've described for me that journey, getting to that point, and the things that were going through your head. And now you've made this decision, you've dropped to your knees. What does that look like going forward now? Finding your way out.
Teen Challenge it's more so drug and alcohol centered, and so that's more what they deal with. For me, it was much deeper, to where I needed, I mean, similar addiction is addiction regardless, but for me it was, I had to have Jesus as my counselor. And so Teen Challenge is set up so that it's a year-long program, because you see the state programs are 30 days, 90 days. Those barely get you sober enough, let alone scratch the surface of anything. And so that year at Teen Challenge was absolutely vital for me to truly, truly build my relationship with Jesus from the bottom up, and knowing that he wants to have a relationship, and that he's the one that can, that he is the one that takes away that guilt, that shame, and he's washed me white as snow. And who I was before doesn't matter, because the day that I surrendered my life to Jesus, I was changed, forever changed.
Was that year easy?
No, because nobody was making me be there. I could have left whenever I wanted, but in my head, something kept telling me that God honors completion. God honors completion. And so I can do this. I can do this year. It's taken me 15 years to create this mess. It's going to take me a long time to fix this mess. And so for me, that year, which then turned into a couple extra months because I'm stubborn, but it was very hard. there at Teen Challenge, you're in a room with 16 women who all have their own baggage, their own issues. They're coming from all of their hurts. You stick us all in a room together and we're going to rub each other raw. So it was definitely a very hard year. But if I didn't experience that year, there's no way that I would have made it.
What do you think, in looking back at all of this, you mentioned a couple people along the way, that were either instrumental or played a part in your story and in your journey. Do you think that there was anybody in particular, or was it just a culmination of different people pouring into you in such a way that just would not give up on you? Do you think that there's an aspect to your story, I guess, where there was someone in your life that you can contribute to maybe giving you that extra push?
When I was back in high school, I ran away from home. I was tired of them telling me I needed help and I needed to go to counseling. So I ran away from home. And a family in town, Kathy Rector, she knew the mess I was in, but she listened to God, and she opened her arms, she opened her doors, she opened her home, and she let me come live with her. And I know that she has prayed for me every single day since then. And even when it got dark and ugly, she was still praying for me. So I know that without a doubt, that's one huge reason why I finally made the choice to change. Pastor William was the leader of Celebrate Recovery, and I was a part of it, but I wasn't sober, so I wasn't doing any good. He was another one that kept praying for me over and over. At my final breaking point, I had an intervention at the church, and the pastor, Todd, and his wife, Todd Wagner, and his wife, Christine, they had sat down, you need to get this figured out. We got to get some help. They went and sat in the hospital with me while I detoxed and was getting ready to transfer over to the detox center. And they sat with me for 4 hours listening to my story. And I remember the look on their face, just wide-eyed and just amazed and saddened, and all of it all in one. And that's when it kind of clicked that this isn't normal. Bulimia is not the normal way that people stay sober. But it took me 15 years of believing that lie. And with them caring enough to sit with me in that hospital room until I got to where I needed to be, that was huge for me. My mom has always been by my side. My dad's always been by my side. They just didn't know how to help me the right way. And so they've loved me. They've supported me. I think there was a whole team of people praying for me behind the scenes. I can't even start the list because I'd forget somebody and then I'd feel horrible. But I think that was the power of prayer. And even though we want the power of prayer to be right now, like for Kathy, it was 12 years of her praying nonstop.
What advice would you have for anybody that's listening to this that maybe struggles with anything similar to what you went through, even just part of what you went through? What advice would you give to them, having gone through what you've gone through and been able to completely turn your life around? And I want to talk about that too for just a minute. So I want to leave just a few minutes for that. But what advice would you give to people that are living through, maybe they're in it right now, maybe they're in the thick of it? What advice would you give to them?
Kind of like what you said earlier, would my Jesus say that? And so I think, honestly, I see a lot of women who are Christians. Maybe they're saved, they go to church on Sunday, and then they don't really follow him throughout the week. They still kind of get back in that the funk, or they're stuck in their addiction or their torment. And something that really, really helped me was setting up those communion trays, with the little juice cups and the crackers in there. And I used to be so focused on what my tray looked like. All my crackers, none of them were broken. It had to be the Welch's grape juice, the dark grape juice. It had to taste the right way, had to look the right way, had to be perfect. And so my trays were always immaculate when they went out to the sanctuary for everybody. the trays looked perfect, but I had no clue who Jesus was. I didn't know anything about him. And so I was more focused on how the communion cup tasted as opposed to my relationship with Jesus. So here I am. I have no clue. I had no clue that Jesus was even the Son of God. I didn't know. I just knew they were kind of related, like I said before. But here I am worried about how it looked in the church building. And so back to the advice for people, it truly is that relationship with Jesus. And it's not for everyone to see on Sunday. It's Monday morning when those thoughts and those feelings are there. Who are you going to turn to? Are you going to turn to social media? Are you going to turn to what the world will say? Or are you going to turn to God and say, I need your help today, and pick up your cross each and every single day, surrendering it to him, knowing that he created you. He created you exactly how he wants you to be. And just knowing that everybody you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. So just knowing that you can reach out to people, and more than likely they're struggling with a similar thing. And once you can connect with those people, that fellowship that comes within believers to help you know that you're not alone is huge. But you have to be willing to be open, to be honest, and to be willing to share those little hard things inside. And then you'll find those people to connect with and be able to talk about it and finally start to find some healing from it.
So what are you doing now? What projects do you have on your plate? And you've got a lot of things. So, but I want to hear about all of them. So tell me quickly about what your life looks like now, because I mean, it's pretty phenomenal.
So June will be 9 years coming up, clean and sober and healthy and following Jesus. I'm married to Kyle Koontz. We have 3 boys, Aiden, Titus, Adley. They're age 9, 6, and 4. It's baseball season. They're all in 3 different sports. Kyle's a welder, and I just kind of drive. We have a farm. We have animals. We have beef cattle. We have goats. We got pigs. You name it. We have all of that. I did publish my book, The Wretch Like Me.
Yes.
And it's raw. I mean, you heard a lot of my story, and it goes into even more details about it. I had entered it into the Oregon Christian Writers Association into a contest, and I was so excited because I was going to win. And I got a phone call from the president, and she told me that my book was disqualified because it was too graphic. And so we did another version that is a censored version, if you will, but it doesn't have the good stuff in it. The good stuff is the real stuff. It's the raw stuff. So I do speak at some women events and with youth groups. My husband and my family and I, we are passionate about spreading the awareness of those deep-rooted addictions and those things. And so we have a nonprofit called Divine Intervention Specialists. And we do a little bit of both. We help people get into the treatment that they need, but it's also to help the parents and the siblings and the spouses of addicted loved ones. Like, they don't know where to turn. How do we get them the help? Like I said, my mom and dad didn't know how to help. What do we do? How do we get them there? We can't afford it. What resources are there? And so Divine Intervention Specialist is meant to help the whole area, to meet with the family, to set those tough love boundaries, come up with options and a game plan for them. I really like Kale Harbick out in Rainbow, Oregon has a treatment center called ARC 77. And so those two, they do a lot more of the mental behavioral services, and then Teen Challenge does the drug and alcohol aspect of it. And so those are the 2 programs that I really, really, really like. We try to get them to detox and get them into the programs that will help them the best.
Wow. So if you guys are listening, you guys got to go get the book, because it is phenomenal. And you hold the book up again. So for those that are seeing this on YouTube, you guys can see the book. For those that are listening on the podcast, it is a book called A Wretch Like Me by Stephanie Koontz. And it is a powerful, powerful, powerful book. So definitely go pick that up. And is there any last minute things that you just want to share with anybody listening that maybe I haven't asked you about, that you really want to bring into this conversation, or just make sure that is known even about your story?
Just a reminder that Satan is a liar. I mean, there's days when you get in the grind of life and say something will trigger something inside, and parenting is hard enough as is, and then we got Satan in the background. Like I said, I had an abortion, I had a miscarriage, and I lost my daughter, so that's 3 kids, and I have 3 boys now. But Satan will tell me, 50%, you're 50%, you're a failure, you're not a good mom, you're a failure. And so if I'm not on guard at all times, if I'm not constantly in the word, in prayer, working on my recovery, my relationship, then Satan will sneak those in there, and he's trying to take you out. He tries so hard to render us ineffective. And if we're not on guard, then, and if we're not calling him out for what it is, not today, Satan, not today.
I think what you bring up is extremely important. I'm actually really glad that you said that, because I want to make sure that I also don't paint this picture that, you drop to your knees and you spend a year in this program,
and then it's all better.
And then it's all better, right? And you never have those thoughts again, and life is easy now, and you have no more hardships in your life, right? And that could not be farther from the truth. Could not be farther from the truth. But I think now having, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like at least now there are tools, right? And now you can recognize and acknowledge when that is happening, and now you know what the real solution is, right? It's not the bottle of alcohol. It's not the bulimia and throwing up. It's not the Band-Aids. Going to God, like
getting the comparison.
Yeah.
The comparison is hard, because I struggle with weight sometimes. Like if I've gained too much, I want to be able to look in the mirror and love who I am, and not let Satan's voice tell me you're not pretty enough, you're not good enough, and try to sneak that back in. And so with bulimia, with my food addiction, I have to eat, I have to be able to function. And it's constantly knowing how far God has brought me. And so when it becomes an obsession in my head, that's when I have to take a step back and be like, all right, I used to live under a bridge and I used to drink rubbing alcohol. And now am I really worried about gaining a few extra pounds, or how I look on social media, or what these people, because everybody you meet is fighting something, is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. So comparison just gets to be so hard, because we want to fit in. You got all those, the soccer moms, or whatever you want to call them, but we're no different. We're all created uniquely by him for such a big purpose. And my purpose is different than their purpose. And my purpose is, my calling comes from my story. Their calling comes from their story. I'm not Andrea Beem. I'm not Bethany Bravery. All powerful people that have such a beautiful story. And it's meant to cater to different, not cater to, but to help other people. My counselor, that we have a family counselor, Bruce Andrews, and he says it all the time: go where you're needed. If you're not needed there, go somewhere else. And it just makes me realize that some people aren't ready. Some people, you plant that seed and it might take 10, 15 years before that seed grows. Yeah. Go where you're needed, go where you're called, go where you have that niche of influence.
We did our Christians in Business conference the other day, and one of the things in the main story that the gal was sharing was talking about how she was struggling with 2 different paths, 2 different doors that were open to her, so to speak. And she had kept hanging on so tightly to this one path. And what she realized over time is she finally opened up, what she was hanging on so tightly to. And she was like, okay, so I'm open to both of these paths. And okay, so God, so which one do I take? And then what she realized, because he said, well, you pick. And she was like, me, what do you mean? You're supposed to tell me which path I'm supposed to take. And this was the really profound part for me, was what she heard from him was, it doesn't matter which of these paths you take, God can use you, and God is going to use you no matter which path you take, no matter which door you walk through. he's going to use you, right? So you have a
but you have to walk through that. You have to walk through that door, because Satan will do anything that he can to keep you from doing it. Because see, I told you I was going to talk about this. My teeth. I sent you a message a couple weeks ago. I can't do the podcast. My teeth's broken. But because I was bulimic for so long, the enamel on the backside is shot, and that tooth chipped, and my dentist can't get me until later. And that's Satan being like, nope.
Yeah, it is. You have to make the choice to walk through the door and not listen to Satan. You have to make that choice to not listen to him. And you're right. Like we had, like, even right before this, right? My computer totally crashed, couldn't get it to even turn back on. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, Satan, get behind me, get behind me. This is happening. And, you know, it's just, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It doesn't mean life becomes easy. It doesn't mean that. And I don't want to create a false picture that life just is easy. At some point you like turn the corner and it just all goes away. And, you know, there's still battles, right? There are still battles to fight. That's why we have to put on the armor of God every single day. Because
my husband came from addiction too. He also went through the men's center, and, he was a professional baseball player, and he hurt his arm. So he got into pills and opiates and heroin and all the hard drugs. And so he knows that aspect of it. And when we got married, blindsided, under the table, he was addicted to kratom, and then it turned to gambling. And then it's just like one after the other. And I remember being so mad at God. I'm like, you tricked me. But then I had his dad, my father-in-law, flat out said, he's like, what kind of story do you have if you just tell people, well, God delivered me and it's all better? And so exactly what you're saying, God did deliver me. It took me 15 years of walking through hell. God did deliver me. But like with my husband, he surrendered his life to Jesus, and he still struggles. He still falls into that temptation, and there's still those hard things that come up. And so no, it's not a guarantee that it's just going to be all easy from.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think also true that just the key to all this is, you know, God works in mysterious ways, and he absolutely has taken your story and he's turned it into something beautiful. Right. And it amazes me. Even when I got to meet a person yesterday who you have helped, and just the amazing things that they were saying about how they wouldn't be where they are without you helping them. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, you go back to the purpose that you were talking about. Our stories are being used to help certain people, right? And our stories aren't meant to help all of humanity, right? We all have our own struggles, our own things that we're going through. And you got gifted with this unique ability to be able to now use those struggles in such a way that you're helping soul after soul after soul after soul. And to me, that is the beautiful, beautiful part of this story, right? Is that you can just take something that's what's that old, there's a Japanese saying, I don't remember the saying, but I'll explain it, where there's actually a word for it, where you take like a jar or a piece of pottery that's cracked, and they fill in the cracks with gold, and it becomes a beautiful, unique piece of pottery that's like worth a bunch of money, not because of the gold, but because it's a one of a kind. And I can't remember the name for it. It's going to drive me crazy right now. Maybe people can comment on this or something and tell me what the name of it is, but that is your story. God just put all of that back into you and took your cracks and the broken pieces, and he filled them in. And now you are, you know, just able to go and share that with the world. And I just think it's phenomenal. And I probably cannot talk about it enough, because to me, it's just, I don't know, it's one of the most amazing stories that I have heard. And it just resonates with me, because I haven't had even, you know, I haven't had some of the things that you've had in your life. And yet I struggle with some of the same things, right? The shame.
It makes me think of our pastor at our church, weekend before last. You know, you think about addiction, and you think about, like I was saying before, that alcohol, the outward part of my addiction, the alcohol abuse, and the psychotic part of it. So you think of going to help people and we're going to go save the lost, right? We're going to go under the bridge and do these missions underneath the outreach, the homeless outreach. That's what I'm trying to say. So you think of that, but then the pastor brought it up, we also need to help the saved, those that are in church that are saved and are still struggling with those deep rooted issues.
Yeah.
And that was just a huge eye opener for me. Like, we always focus our nonprofit, you think of the homeless outreach, but it's also people in the church as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The story and how it bleeds out into who it helps. You don't even have control over that, right? Like, you have no way of knowing how your path is helping someone else's path.
And I feel like sometimes I overshare my faith. If you see me, I probably got a Jesus hoodie on, or there's something, I'm going to talk about Jesus everywhere I go. And I know that it's hard for a lot of people to endure my boldness, so to say. But I know for a fact, small town community, there are people that are listening, and there's people that, like this book, it's not just for the addict to get help, it's for people to help understand that deep rooted addiction issues.
Yeah.
But people are listening, and it helps spread the word that there's help, that there's hope.
I love this so much. So for all the listeners that are listening to this, if you guys have questions, make sure to reach out to us. I know that Stephanie would answer any question that comes in. I am positive of it, or even just give direction. I think that's part of the problem, is just not knowing the resources, or even so. If you guys have those questions, make sure to reach out to us in a private message, and we can help answer those questions. And then make sure to get our book and read the whole story. You guys kind of got we got the nitty gritty out today in the podcast, but I want you guys to be able to read the whole thing, and just in her words, listening to that is also pretty phenomenal. So Stephanie, thank you so much for being on today. I have so much gratitude for you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yes.